You are listening to the Pro-Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions. Your host tonight is the author of the Pro-Black Compendium and Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa, the Pan-African Nationalist, Oni. Oni, what are we discussing tonight?
Peace Seeker. Today, I'm going to debate James Baldwin and Audre Lorde. But before we get into that, I want you to know that a book club was just restarted by the Bitter Medicine podcast with our brother Koku. If you go to bittersonmedicineblogs.com, you can get more information on that book club starting up. And the first book they will read is King Leopold's Ghost. Definitely participate because that is a great group of people. And we all need to read more. Now, on that note, I'm going to debate James Baldwin and Audre Lorde. And there's a reason why I'm going to debate these two individuals. One, because they left their... They have a document which can be analyzed and understood for a better understanding of what the activists in our community think and how they think and why it's wrong and why we need to take the path that we take, the path of Ancobia. But on the other hand, it's because these are two individuals who would be considered quote-unquote intellectuals. And there's a trouble with them being branded as intellectuals and then people like me or Cooks or Garvey, I know, right? Great group, but being forgotten. And really that's nearly the path that we're going, or that, let's say, I'm heading, because I'm looking at, the conversation surrounding my literature, or even what the translation of that conversation. That's to say, how many sales are made in any given, time frame. And I'm seeing it and I'm saying, hey, look, looks like our people are not interested. Looks like the interest of our people has not been sparked. Looks like I'm talking to a wall. I want to say that I have a good product and people appreciate this product. But when I look at the people who I would expect to be promoting it, like I am, they're promoting or they're discussing Kanye more than the literature. They're discussing Childish Gambino more than the literature. And in that way, it tells me, well, maybe it's not, maybe that's it. Maybe I'm done, And if that's the case, so be it. I put out good work, and that's all I can do. But here's the other issue. Baldwin, Audre Lorde, these are actually big names. Now, many of you might not be familiar with Audre Lorde, but I am. Because I learned about her when I was in university. But before I go into that, and actually Baldwin too. Baldwin even when I came into, let's say, consciousness, if you will, you know, Baldwin, like I never really read anything from Baldwin, but I saw one of his quotes, which was, they saw themselves as others seen them. They had been formed by the images made of them by those who had the deepest necessity to despise them. And it was quasi deep, and quasi deep to the point where I said, let me include this in the original 8-week program. You know, so before I revived my 8-week disciplinary program, the program that you see in the Pro-Black Compendium, before I revised it, this was a quote that we would review week in and week out. Eventually, you know, I took it out because, you know, Baldwin is, you know, quite a questionable person, but and I'll go into that later. But that was, you know, Baldwin, you know, is somebody who is somebody. Apparently, the screenplay for Malcolm X's movie, for the movie on Malcolm X that Spike Lee directed, Spike Lee edited the script that James Baldwin wrote for that movie. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm gonna give you guys a little context about James Baldwin, and this is probably the most important context that you're gonna get. So apparently, actually, let me look it up quickly. Here, so it says, so this is Alambe Breath, and he says, after a while, James Baldwin came to the podium. He spoke softly, then took out a white hanky and waving it gestured to the audience. Can you all hear me back there? He demurred. Malcolm, used to the fiery oratory of Harlem streets and even churches, raised an eyebrow and leaned to me and asked, is that guy a faggot? I was no authority on Baldwin at the time, but answered, I don't know, your guess is as good as mine, but I think so. Malcolm just smiled and leaned back in his seat and listened to what Baldwin had to say. I thought he was going to book for the door, right? So Alambe Brath is saying, you know, basically James Baldwin comes about with this, you know, really feminine, you know, waving a white hanky, you know, and it's like, and speaking softly, and it's like, you know, whoa, you know? Well, basically Baldwin was, and this is important to note, he was homosexualized, and he was in you know, interracial arrangement. Okay? And that's really important because he's a man or a black man who is homosexualized, right? You could see that he's also feminized, right? And he's also in an interracial relationship or interracial arrangement, you know? And notice that I said homosexualized, okay? Because that's what's happening to us as a people. You know, I'm not going to contend that it's, you know, that every behavior that we do is something we're born doing, you know? And I'm not going to contend that people don't choose to do things that are objectionable to other people, you know? Case in point, you know, there are gangbangers, you know, who choose to do things that's, you know, choose to, like, say, deal drugs to their own family or to somebody's grandmother or something, right? And they choose to do it, you know? And of course, I know some of you are thinking about Kanye West right now. You can stop that. But the whole idea is that, you know, when I say homosexualized, you know, you have to understand the context of how and where somebody comes into, you know, this sort of contact or this sort of idea of doing that kind of activity. And the ironic thing is that in this discussion, you know, he's talking with Audre Lorde, And Audre Lorde is somebody, like I said, I studied in university. You know, her essay called Age, Race, Class, and Sex, Women Redefining Difference was, you know, to me, a precursor to intersectionality. Okay? And I thought it was one of the most brilliant essays I read when I was in university, because it weighs a person's identity against a quote-unquote mythical norm, right? And that mythical norm, let me look through this paper, because I have the article I wrote on my website, which is, you know, africanbloodsiblings.wordpress.com. And here's how she puts it. She says, somewhere on the edge of consciousness, there's what I call a mythical norm. So on the edge of everybody's consciousness, there's a thing called a mythical norm, or everybody in America, right? Which each one of us within our hearts knows that is not me. So in America, this norm is usually defined as white, thin, male, young, heterosexual, or Christian, and financially secure. It is within this mythical norm that the trappings of power reside within this society, right? So I thought it was pretty interesting, this idea that people, you know, weigh their identities against a mythical norm, if you will. You know, so if you are thin, you don't really identify as thin. But if you're fat, you identify as fat as against thinness. You know, this is notwithstanding whether you're white or Christian or male or whatever. And the same with, you know, if you're a Christian, if you're heterosexual, you don't really, you know, or if you're white, you know, it's more like you identify as black as opposed to, you know, it's really stupid. Like today, I see it as really stupid. But when I was, you know, in university, you know, surrounded by stupidity, of course, you know, I thought well of it, right? And so this is what I write in the, let's say, preface of my article, Notes on Audre Lorde's Age, Race, Sex, Class and Sex, Women Redefining Difference. It says, I said, in university, this is one of my favorite essays. Today I see it as silly. Still it merits, and let me see what year I wrote this. I wrote this in 2012, right? So in university, this was one of my favorite essays. Today I see it as silly. Still, its merit is in the speculation of the mythical norm, an evolution of Du Bois's double consciousness and Fanon's dual consciousness. This part I put in bold below. Otherwise, I only alter the essay with useful footnotes. To influence your reading, I want you to realize that this is an example of Occidental academics. Though the author is an original. So this is white academics, although she's an African woman, right? In Occidental academics, especially by originals, integration is a goal, and cultural differences like originalism are ignored. So, for instance, the author promotes homosexuality through African people as culturally heterosexual. Promotes homosexuality, though African people are culturally heterosexuals. Her quest for homosexual acceptance is thus a form of cultural imperialism, oppression for European beliefs no less. Nevertheless, with Occidentalism as her ideology, she sees Africans willing to keep their culture intact as an enemy. This is no different from when Europeans stopped us from practicing our drums. Feminism, insomuch as it is an attack on patriarchy, is a just cause for Africans, not Europeans. Europeans have little history outside of patriarchy. Africans should live in matriarchies. However, this truth is untold even in women's studies courses. Hence the confusion below of women's unity, which is truly another piece of European unite below me, aka Yorugo. We need to accept that Europeans practice barbarism and hate their women. This is a historical fact. When we finally accept this, we can properly fix our society so Africans no longer harm our own by behaving as Europeans or Asians do. Loyal Africans, okay, we can fix our society, and I say write to ABS to help build ABS community centers, right? But I gotta, so obviously I'm familiar with Audre Lorde, right? But here I want to read you another thing from this essay, right? She says, As a 49-year-old lesbian, feminist, socialist, mother of two, including one boy, and a member of an interracial couple, I usually find myself as part of some group defined as other, deviant, inferior, or just plain wrong, right? So there you have it. Audre Lorde, like Baldwin, is homosexualized, right? And into that interracial stuff. Okay? So notice that. These are two black people, right? Debating on a black topic, if you will, right? And neither of them are straight or in a black relationship. You understand? And then, but meanwhile, these both of them are quote unquote intellectuals, and they're still lauded by African people to this day, and they are in colleges. They're being taught in colleges. I myself learned about at least Audre Lorde in college, but of course that was in like a women's studies course. If I took a black studies course, James Baldwin would be like a prime feature. You understand what I'm saying? Meanwhile, there was a brother who told me that I would be forgotten, and I would amount to nothing, and that was recently. That was like last month or something, right? Or maybe 2 months ago. But that whole, that mentality might not be too far off from the truth. Especially when I'm looking at, how my book is being received and how my book is being shared, because technically I'm doing the brunt of the work, and some may say, yeah, that's how you're supposed to do it, but the question is, what are we doing to not necessarily avoid me being forgotten, because obviously that's not a concern to everybody, but more so to put forth good examples, good examples of intellectualism, good examples of warrior status, good example of what should belong in a black learning environment. Because Baldwin and Audre Lorde are being included in black learning environments. It was a black person who put up this debate. In fact, this debate actually happened in a black magazine, Essence magazine, in 1984, right? So and then of course it's being reblogged, it's being retweeted, it's being circulated. Meanwhile, and it's not being circulated as, oh, look at these two homosexualized interracialist fools, right? It's being circulated as, wow, what brilliance, what genius. Look at what they're saying. We can analyze them. They're so correct, Meanwhile, Cooks, Garvey, me, other people, not being circulated. Not so heavily. And the people who should be circulating us, right, are instead, engaging in, the distraction. They're saying, hey, our people are distracted, and yada yada, but they're not realizing that, notwithstanding whether our people are distracted or whether you could reach our people from their distractions, white people have colleges. What I'm saying? White people have learning environments that they encourage smart black folk to go to, quote unquote smart black folk to go to, and get indoctrinated. And the question is, where are our institutions? While we're pointing at these distractions that's going on, while we're I read somebody say black celebrities are the leaders of black people, which is nonsense, obviously, but where is like notwithstanding that, where are our institutions? Another person pointed out that Hollywood will never have never make a revolutionary revolutionary radical black person thrive. But the question is, where are we making revolutionary black radicals thrive? You get what I'm saying? Like we point our finger too much, but we don't, build with the hammer, if you will. If you are concerned about your people, like I said in the Pro-Black Compendium, Martin Delany points it out. He says, whatever liberty is worth to the whites, it is worth to the blacks. Therefore, whatever whites are willing to do to accomplish it, let's say, I don't remember it verbatim, but whatever whites are willing to accomplish it, we should be able to do ourselves, right? White people have celebrities too, okay? But they also have politicians. You don't, right? White people have celebrities, and they listen to their celebrities, and they follow celebrity trends and all that crap, but they also have schools, and they have universities. And believe it or not, they pay their intellectuals, quote unquote. Like, they pay their intellectuals to share their knowledge and bring their young up toward that knowledge. You understand what I'm saying? You listen to, you might like hearing my podcast. Let's say you do, right? And I don't know, I can't say that that's the case because not too many people are listening. But let's say you are listening, right? You like this podcast. But the question is, how much is it worth to you? You understand? Because white people pay their quote-unquote professors. They build up whole institutions so that their professors can lecture and thrive off of lecturing. Right? But the question is, what do you do? Or how much do you value your quote-unquote professors? You understand? If I'm forgotten tomorrow, fine. But my issue is not so much about me as much as what are we doing for our young? Like, what are we preparing for them? Or what are we doing? And by young, I don't just mean, kids. I mean, in general, our people. What are we doing for them that they have a platform that they can sustain themselves off of? What are we doing meaningfully? Because let's face it, white people say, "Hey, look, this is a gifted little boy. He's pretty good at math, right? Let's make him a math professor. Let's have institutions in place to make him a math professor. Or this little boy, he likes reading, war books, right? Let's make him a historian. Let's put some institutions. Let's make him a historian. This person, all that. They have those institutions, and then what do we have? What do you have? And then when you are, when you have some sort of input or when you have some sort of interest in something, you put up Audre Lorde and you put up James Baldwin. Or you don't necessarily put them up. You don't necessarily put them up, but when they're put in your hands, it's without protest. Or even if it is in protest, let's just face it. The reality is that these are the people in the universities, in the colleges, and then you wonder why your people come out so confused. You wonder, but it's like, why wouldn't they be? Why wouldn't they be? Are you putting Garvey in them? Are you putting Cooks in them? Are you putting Onitaset in them? If not, then why do you think that if you put why are you confused when you put James Baldwin and Audre Lorde into a people that they will come out, looking at interracial stuff and looking at homosexualized stuff? Like, what's so confusing about that? And you spend all your energy, and a lot of you spend, or a lot of our people spend a lot of their energy, lambasting, homosexualized relationships or relationships or arrangements or whatever, right? And interracial arrangements. A lot of time lambasting it, but it behooves us. Where are the institutions to be against that? Where are the institutions? So I'm going to start off with this debate, and what I'm going to do is that I'm going to read this discussion that they had from, like I said, 1984 Essence magazine, right? And it's on black men, but it's so stupid that I'm going to comment throughout. So James Baldwin starts it off. One of the dangers of being a black American is being schizophrenic. And I mean schizophrenic in the most literal sense. To be a black American is in some ways to be born with a desire to be white. It's a part of the price you pay for being born here, and it affects every black person. We can go back to Vietnam, we can go back to Korea, we can go back, for that matter, to the First World War. We can go back to W.E. Du Bois, an honorable and beautiful man who campaigned to persuade black people to fight in the First World War, saying that if we fight in this war to save this country, our right to citizenship can never, never again be questioned. And who can blame him? He really meant it. And if I'd been there at that moment, I would have said so too, perhaps. Du Bois believed in the American dream. So did Martin. So did Malcolm. So do I. So do you. That's why we're sitting here. Right? Utter idiocy. Okay? Even Audre Lorde calls him out. It's so remarkably stupid, but this is pretty much the thesis of the activist. And if you know what an activist is, if you don't know what an activist is, you got to finish the Pro-Black Compendium. Toward the end, there's the essay on the 4 stages of consciousness. The activist isn't as bad as the Ascari, but they're bad. Okay, the Ascari and the activists are criminals. Point blank. Right? They have a criminal consciousness. They will turn the gun against you. This black person is saying and admitting that he has some desire to be white. And again, remember, he's homosexualized, and he sleeps with white men. But this is the intellectual that's in the colleges, in the dialogue, in the discussion, and again, people, even conscious people, would sometimes revere Baldwin as an intellectual, as one of the foremost, one of the foremost, and it's so bizarre when you just start off with this, Malcolm, Martin did, everybody wants to be American, everybody wants to be a white person. No, first and foremost, just get out of here. You want to be a black person, okay? You want to be spiritually inside of you. You want to be a black person, okay? All right. So Audre Lorde says, "I don't, honey. I'm sorry. I just can't let that go past. Deep, deep, deep down, I know that dream was never mine. And I wept and I cried and I fought and I stormed, but I just knew it. I was black, I was female, and I was out by any construct wherever the power lay. So if I had to call myself insane, if I lived, I was going to have to do it alone. Nobody was dreaming about me. Nobody was even studying me except as something to wipe out." Now, another, this is like the feminist thesis. Okay, so one of them. So bear in mind that when I read somebody wrote on Twitter, they said that basically, long story short, James Baldwin is arguing on the quote unquote, oh, we're all under white supremacy, and Audre Lorde, let's say, is arguing that we're all under patriarchy, right? White patriarchy, something like that, right? Here's the but you see the trouble here. Nobody was even studying me except as to wipe me out. What are you talking about, Audre Lorde? Like, what are you talking about? It's so over the top and overly dramatic. It serves nothing, And you see both of them are victims, like victim mentality. Both of them ride this victim mentality hard. Audre Lorde talking about, as a black woman, she's being targeted for genocide, like exclusively, exclusively, which is just so stupid. It's just so stupid, but there are black people who would believe this and look back at Audre Lorde as an intellectual authority, but it's just so stupid that, like, it's just really stupid. If anything, the distinction between the sexes isn't really a consideration for white people, in terms of extermination. It's just not even remotely, like nowhere in the annals of like even if you read military history, there's no let's target the women, if you will. It doesn't even make sense on a war, like on a militaristic view. And this whole "nobody was even studying me" is probably like just the dumbest thing, because it's like I said, I should you got to read the 4 stages of consciousness in the Pro-Black Compendium, but you see kind of like what Baldwin says, the desire to be white, the desire to be studied by white people, which is like should just be beyond anyone's interest. But that's not only what Audre Lorde is saying, but what quote unquote black feminists say today. There's no studies on us, or look at what we did, and look at what we did distinct from though, like just so stupid. It really is. But I'm gonna move on. I'm just gonna move on. But I hope you see like just the flaws in this thinking. But we're gonna keep going. So James Baldwin says, "You are saying you do not exist in the American dream except as a nightmare?" Don't know when she said that, but we're gonna move on. It's really just that dumb, and it's pretty long, so I'm gonna move on, right? That's right, Audre Lorde says, right? And I knew it every time I opened Jet 2. I knew that every time I opened the Kotex box. I knew that every time I went to school. I knew that every time I opened a prayer book. I knew it. I just knew it, right? Right? Okay, so James Baldwin says, "It is difficult to be born in a place where you are despised and also promised that with endeavor, with this, with that, you can accomplish the impossible. You're trying to deal with the man, the woman, the child of whichever sex, and he or she and your man or your woman has got to deal with the 24-hour-a-day facts of life of this country. We're not going to fly off someplace else, We'd better get through whatever that day is, and still have each other and still raise children, right? Somehow manage all of that. And this is 24 hours a day, 24 hours of every day, and you're surrounded by all the paraphernalia of safety. If you can strike this bargain here, if you can make sure your armpits are odorless, curl your hair, be impeccable, be all the things that the American public say you should do, right? And you do all those things and nothing happens really. And what is much worse than that, nothing happens to your child either, right? So James Baldwin is like you see, it's white acceptance. That's the crux of it. It's just white acceptance. Like, oh, I do all this stuff and whitey still doesn't accept me. Meanwhile, bear in mind again, both of them are in interracial relationships. Or interracial arrangements, if you will, right? So, and actually, let me check the year on this too, because the Audre Lorde essay was in 1980, right, and reproduced in 1984. So she was in an interracial arrangement at this point. So both of them are in interracial arrangements, right? So what are they really saying? This whole whitey doesn't accept me, but they're in a relationship with these, or they're in an arrangement, right, with these white folk. And the reason why I want to say arrangement instead of relationship is because, well, not just to emphasize the disparity. Well, really, white people can't relate well, right? Or on a black level, right? They shouldn't have the same moniker as what we would give how we relate, right? On the one hand, but on the other hand, and not just that, but also because it's like homosexualized. I mean that would even factor in it too. So not just because it's race, but also just what it is, all the same. I'll try to come back to this point, but you see what he's saying, and you notice he's talking about our children. Now I didn't know Audre Lorde had a child, but usually homosexualized people don't have children. It's this is just remarkable, because this is intellectual. This is something that you would analyze in a school. And I don't find it intellectual. I'm just saying that this is something that's accepted and passed around as intellectual. But just look at it. Just hear it. Oh, if I'm impeccable, if I'm doing all this, then things are going to be better. But it's not. Neither for me nor my child. Like, what? Like, shut up. Like, why are you whining so much? But remember, this dude is really feminine. Really feminine, really soft. Really unthreatening, and really he sleeps in bed with white folk, white men no less, right? But here he is, possibly in an actual debate, right? Like sitting down with Audre Lorde, and he's just, he's talking like, oh no, white people won't accept me, white people kick me down. Like, what are you even talking about? You're sleeping with him. Like, what more do you want? It seems like that's what you want, Like, what more do you, It's like if I'm complaining about, oh man, good-looking women, they're not interested in me, they just, these sisters, man, they just don't like me, because they're not. And then meanwhile, you look at my woman and she's bad, like, what am I talking about? Like, what more do I want from this woman? Like, what do I what is it? And if I find these bad looking women, these good looking women so harmful, or such a harm, or such a detriment, so evil, or whatever, so wicked, then why in the world would I be sleeping with them? I'll just be singing Poison, never trust a big butt and a smile, and walk away. You get what I'm saying? But that's also, that's another thing too. It's like your life, this promoting these two people, right, kind of says, hey, your actions don't mean a thing when it comes to your words, right? Which is false, right? And you could go back into the Pro-Black Compendium and you'll see another Delaney quote where he says that you can judge people by their personal affairs, right? But the whole thing is that it's false. But because white people put these people forward, they put the Baldwin and the Audre Lorde in front of you and say, hey, look, these are quote unquote pro-black people, right? But meanwhile, they do pro-white stuff, right? By doing that, it messes up with the heads. Like I said, it brings the contradictions. It messes up with the heads of black people, where we say, oh, well, look, Audre Lorde is homosexualized, and Audre Lorde is homosexualized, and she, and she was pro-black. She was in a relationship with a white woman, and she was pro-black. You understand? That's done on purpose. Because neither of these people are are pro-black. Neither of them are saying anything, remotely profound, remotely solve nothing to solve. They're not solving anything, but that's what's going on. And in fact, I want to read you guys another quote I put up, and I put this on my social media. So I have Twitter, and on Twitter I put up a few quotes from a book that Osman DC's lent me, and I gotta finish and reading it. But here's another quote that I put up, and this one has to do with when Malcolm X met when he spoke to Carlos A. Cooks, right? And let me see if I can find it quickly. And yeah, I'm trying to do this recording in one breath, right? But here you go. So Malcolm, so it says, this is by Lambe Brath again, right? And he says, later, Malcolm X and a small group of his followers came over and approached Carlos A. Cooks. I was standing right there, Malcolm said. Mr. Cooks. No, I was standing right there. Malcolm said, Mr. Cooks, why can't we get together? Just that straight. But Cooks' reply was earth-shattering and in light of history, monumental. Cooks said, we'll get together when you get a program. Malcolm looked at Cooks, then bowed his head humbly and said, I see. Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooks, and walked away. He was leaning toward the nationalistic point of view, but Cooks evidently didn't see it that way. He felt Malcolm was part and parcel of the Muslim community, which he felt was in African denial. Consider if Cooks and Malcolm X had united at least on a superficial level, right? And on that note, I'm going to take a break and, because the Carlos A. Cooks reader, I'm selling that for $15, okay? Like I'm selling the Pro-Black Compendium, $15. Selling Zuberi and Maroons of Maa, $15. And maybe my next book, I'll probably sell for $15 too. Who knows, right? You let me know if I could go higher, because apparently, maybe $15 is not really your interest when it comes to even the Pro-Black Compendium, because I don't see the interest. But on that, I want to say that this, Carlos A. Cooks was a man even Malcolm approached, right, and said, hey, Mr. Cooks, how can we work together? And he said, look, get out of here. You need a program, right? And that's something that you got to realize when it comes to these quote-unquote intellectuals. They don't have a program. You understand? They're whining. They're saying how much of a victim they are. They're saying what's going on, but they don't have a program. And notice that these are the people that are in the colleges, and these are the people regaled as intellectuals. People without programs, people who you can't work with. Even if you wanted to work with, you can't work with them. You get what I'm saying? Now, Oni had a program, or Oni has a program, right? And the Pro-Black Compendium has a whole lot of programs, right? But the trouble is that you got all these distracting intellectuals, if you will, and you see the idiocy in them. But like I said, if you want to see a book on programs, like a programming book, let's say, or a book on a program, right? You get this Carlos A. Cooks reader. So I'm gonna cut to a commercial, right? And it's gonna be about the Carlos A. Cooks reader. And I want you to hit me up about getting yourself a copy. You hear me? I want you to say, hey, look, I'm listening to this commercial on Carlos Cooks. He has a program. Onitaset has a program. Marcus Garvey had a program. Let me look at this program. Amos Wilson had a program. Let me look at these programs. That's what I need to get. And then when it comes to institutionalizing, our own education, it's about being program oriented, not discussion and victim oriented, like James Baldwin and Audre Lorde. We're gonna cut to a commercial.
Greetings, everyone. This is Koku from the Bitter Medicine Podcast, inviting you to tune in to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Peace Seeker. This is Oni from the Pro-Black Perspective, and we need power. Power will not be handed to us. We need to build power. But in order to build power, we need a power blueprint. You need to study the best blueprints available. You have Garveys. You have Wilsons. You have Williams. You You have mind. Now, you'll have Cooks. Carlos A. Cooks was Garvey's best student. The greatest mind in the world from 1940 to 1966. Yes, the greatest. Yet Whitey doesn't want you to read his blueprint. Cook's blueprint isn't religious. Cook's isn't for integration. Cook's isn't for communism. Cook's isn't even for anti-blacks. Cook's blueprint is for Africa. And Cook's blueprint is the unknown blueprint that was the basis of black power as we know it today. When you say buy black, you're talking about Cooks. When you say black is beautiful, you're talking about Cooks. When you say Malcolm got something right, you're talking about Cooks. But Cook's blueprint was lost. And Whitey is hiding that blueprint behind a $1,000 paywall. He's hiding solutions from you, telling you you need to take out a small loan to get the information that can liberate you. Whitey does not want you to have solutions to your problems, but you need solutions. You need power. I will give you the Carlos A. Cooks Reader, valued over $1,000 at a 98% discount, $15. Send $15 to cash.me/$ABS-ONI with the subject Carlos and your email address, and I'll send you the ebook. We need power. You need blueprints. Start building today.
You are listening to the Pro-Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio.
Okay, so we're back, right? And, I'm hoping, that my phone's blowing up from everybody sending me an email. Everybody sending me an email with $15. Or their email address with $15 to my cash.me account. I'm hoping that my phone's blowing up. All right, so here's what Audre Lorde said. She says, even worse than the nightmare is the blank, and black women are the blank. I don't want to break all this down, then have to stop at the wall of male-female division. When we admit and deal with difference, when we deal with the deep bitterness, when we deal with the horror of even our different nightmares, when we turn them and look at them, it's like looking at death, hard but possible. If you look at it directly without embracing it, then there is much less that you can ever be made to fear. Okay, ridiculous, right? She's going to go into the male-female division, and the truth is that the male-female division is stupid. It's really stupid, and I'm tired of even conscious people entertaining it. Again, white people have these institutions where they put fools like Audre Lorde, like you have to study them, you have to read them, you have to answer questions. I had to read and answer questions on Audre Lorde in order to graduate. You understand what I'm saying? You so it's weird for you to constantly debate, especially on the low level that some of you debate them. Just look at this person, he's so stupid, right? Whatever. Of course, they're looking at it like, hey, I'm college educated, and I learned this in college at the foot of a black woman, or even possibly a white woman, or anybody really. But the reality is that they read this in a college, in a quote unquote educated setting, and you simply oh man, you're so look how silly these people are, isn't enough, because they're churning it out nationwide. They're having this huge movement, that even white people are like, oh no, these feminists, right? because they, all these feminists took over these schools, and meanwhile you're doing nothing but complaining on a low level, and you're just looking pretty much like, oh no, this is so silly. But it's like, where's your institutions? The male-female division is just so stupid because and then like, for what it's worth, you participate in it. You're like, oh man, well, actually black men are pretty good, and you can't say all black men are this way. Like, cool, shut the fuck up. Real talk. Who cares? You don't have any institutions. You're not building an institution, because the thing is that they have an institution where they churn out that nonsense. You have to have an institution to churn out sense. If you don't have an institution to churn out sense, the reality is that nonsense is just going to keep coming. One of the earliest quotes, and I got to open up the Pro-Black Compendium, but one of the earliest quotes I had was on the reality of this was a core tenet of the African blood siblings, and it was tenet. Let me show you this right here. So I only had 12. I only had 12 tenets, and I was like, hey, look, I gotta like, if you don't know anything else, you gotta know these tenets, right? And they were so important that I said, look, you gotta do it. So it's organized justice defeats organized injustice. So basically, this is, let's use, instead of justice and injustice, let's say sense and nonsense, right? Organized sense defeats organized nonsense. The trouble with you is that you're not engaged in organized sense. You're engaged in disorganized sense. That does not defeat organized nonsense. It doesn't. For the last 20 years, white people have had universities all over the world, or all over America, let's say, right? Probably the world, whatever, though, right? All over the world, where they have black women reading Audre Lorde and James Baldwin, right? Audre Lorde encouraging gender division, right? They have black women and white women reading Audre Lorde, okay? Mostly black women, but reading Audre Lorde for 20 years, right? In order to get accredited, in order to get into powerful positions in white society, okay? Even mediocre positions. But somehow you think that your little tweet about, man, well, that's not all black men, or you feminists, you think that is gonna somehow counteract and reverse the tide. You're supposed to be training black people from the last 20 years on doing programs out of Carlos A. Cook's Reader, or out of the Pro-Black Compendium, or out of the Blueprint for Black Power, or out of Chancellor Williams, whatever. You were supposed to be doing that for 20 freaking years. But you weren't. And you still aren't. And you're still not supporting the people who can enact those programs, or who can teach for 20 years. My every month, you should be sending me a donation. You should be saying, hey, look, Oni, I love that you're teaching us. Here's something. I could have done that on Patreon. I could have said, hey, look, I'm going to make this podcast exclusive. But I figured, look, I got to get this podcast out. Because I know that y'all not trying to put a dime into your education, or into spreading the message. And you don't even have to put a dime. It would be appreciated, sure. Well, not a dime. 10 cents is not really whatever. But it'd be appreciated. But the thing is that you should be sharing. You should be clipping out pieces and saying, hey, look, listen to this clip. You should be playing it at the barbecue, at the functions, that's what should be. I should hear that. I should hear. I need somebody to send me a text saying, "Hey, Oni, I was playing the pro-black. I was playing the pro-black perspective at the family cookout, and people were like, yo, I need to get that book." And I know they're not going to get it, but even them saying that is a step toward them getting something down the line. It might not be my book, but it could be something. Or you could say, hey, look, I called all the young people together, and I played episode 6, whatever it is, or I had them recite poems out of the Pro-Black Compendium, because I got poems in it. You gotta be doing something, and you gotta be doing something consistently for the next 20 years. You understand? Like, look again at what I wrote, what I said before. That was an article I wrote in 2012. Some people listening to that are saying they weren't even conscious in 2012, and I was writing, analysis of this weirdo, Audre Lorde, back then. And bear in mind, I'm not that old. But let me go back to this ridiculous, discussion, right? Before before I get tired of it, right? So James Baldwin just says, "I agree," right? That's not a debate. That's so stupid, but whatever, right? So she says, Audre Lorde says, "Well, in the same way, when we look at our differences and not allow ourselves to be divided, when we own them and are not divided by them, that is when we will be able to move on. But we haven't reached square one yet." Right? So it's ironic. She's saying, let's not be divided, right? It's ironic. But again, remember this. She's not even in a relationship with a black man. Like, she doesn't have the decency to either be in a relationship with a black person or a man. And he doesn't have, and James Baldwin doesn't have the decency to be in a relationship with a black person or a woman. Just think about that. They don't even have that, because they're here posing as, black intellectuals, black thinkers, and there they are, not even sleeping black, or even straight. But moving on, right? James Baldwin says, "I'm not sure of that. I think the black sense of male and female is much more sophisticated than the Western idea. I think that the black men and women are much less easily thrown by the question of gender or sexual preference, all that jazz. At least that is true of my experience." And again, you see how ridiculous or like this dude. Again, remember, Malcolm X died in the 60s. Okay? So when he saw James Baldwin, he said, "Is this guy a faggot?" He was, that was 20 years before this conversation. So it's well known that James Baldwin is gay, or at least James Baldwin at least knows he's gay, okay, or homosexualized, right? But there you have him talking. Black men and women are much less easily thrown by the question of gender or sexual preference. All that jazz. What? So they're both homosexual, but they're both pretending to not be. Or maybe, like this is just ridiculous, right? All right, so let's go to the next one. Audre Lorde says, "Yeah, but let's remove ourselves from merely a reactive position, i.e., black men and women reacting to what's out there. While we are reacting to what's out there, we're also dealing between ourselves. And between ourselves, there are power differences that come down." Right? So she's like, hey, look, let's talk about the power difference between black men and black women. And again, that's so stupid. Okay? Basically, black people, the oppression, let's say, some people don't like the word oppression, but let's just use it for now, right? Because I had an essay on oppression, right? Or dialogue on oppression. And the reality is that you, as an African person, are, let's say, oppressed because you can't practice your culture. And whether you're a man or a woman, your inability to practice your culture describes your oppression. You understand? So it's not a gender thing. This whole idea of power difference between two, you're not practicing your culture. You understand? You're powerless without your culture. There's no power difference between powerless people. When you're practicing your culture, you're powerful. And there's no power difference. You know, you might say, well, what about the white man and the white woman? You know, doesn't the white man hold more power? If you believe what the white man would say, yeah, sure. But the reality is that this white woman can't be outside, like white people can't exist out of quote unquote patriarchy. You understand? The white woman gave birth to patriarchy for the last 4,000 years. You understand? She's not against it. It's her way. You understand? There's no power difference. Her way is give everything to the man. You understand? That's why you know fools are like, hey, well, you know, they wouldn't elect Hillary Clinton, and not notice that white women voted against Hillary Clinton. Some of them because she was a woman. And even if you look at the history of Hillary Clinton, you know, you'll see that a lot of women were against her for just being involved in her husband's presidency. You can't. This social order that white women find themselves in, right, is the social order that white women want themselves to be in. And there's no power difference between white men and white women. It's just a different set of responsibilities, a different roles that some white women, you know, quote unquote feminists, want to challenge. Or even some white men might take to an extreme. But regardless, it's nothing. You know, it's not a difference. But if you don't understand, if you don't have an analytical mind, let's say, or if you don't understand the situation, then you might say something stupid like what Audre Lorde said, and then take the illogical, you know, conclusion that, well, if there's a power difference between white men and white women, there's a power difference between black men and black women. Notwithstanding that, you know, you have to have power to have a power difference. But James Baldwin says, oh yes, right? And Audre Lorde says, truly dealing with how we live, recognizing each other's differences is something that hasn't happened. And James Baldwin, you know, ever the feminine, says differences and samenesses. And Audre Lorde says differences and samenesses, but in a crunch, when all our asses are in the sling, it looks like it's easier to deal with the samenesses. When we deal with the samenesses only, we develop weapons that we use against each other when the differences become apparent, and we wipe each other out. Black men and women can wipe each other out far more effectively than outsiders do. And James Baldwin says that's true enough. Now, what in the world is she talking about? And she's just going on, and look, there are black women who are sitting down. First, they introduce this Audre Lorde crap, and they're like, "Whoa, this is ridiculous! I never heard of this in my life." Right? Then their white woman teacher says, "Hey, this woman's a genius, isn't she?" And then these black women try to, you know, they turn their head left, they turn their head right, and then finally they just say, you know, maybe she is a genius, and they just go through with it. They say, you know what, you know, yeah, black men and women can wipe each other out more effectively than white people can, and that's not remotely true. That's not remotely true. And in fact, black people are not even like you don't see a record of black people trying to wipe each other out, let alone like on a gendered basis. More importantly, or intersexual basis, or you know what I mean, intrasexual basis, right? But not only do you not see that, but it's just like so stupid. Like it really is just so stupid. But then James Baldwin just said that's true enough. You know, if I were in that debate, real talk, I would have probably just said, let me get out. Let me just stand up and get out because this person's an idiot, right? But Audre Lorde is going to continue and she says, and our blood is high, our furies are up. I mean, it's what black women do to each other, black men do to each other, and black people do to each other. We are in the business of wiping each other out in one way or the other and essentially doing our enemies' work. And this is interesting. She says our enemies. Listen to me. She's sleeping with a white woman. She's a socialist. Self-described socialist. Like what in the world? You understand? She says enemies work, and then James Baldwin, you know, really feminine. Again, that's quite true. Just notice how much he's agreeing with her, right? But you know, Audre Lorde continues. She says, we need to acknowledge those power differences between us and see where they lead us. An enormous amount of energy is being taken up with either denying the power differences between black men and women, or fighting over power differences between black men and women, or killing each other off behind them. I'm talking about black women's blood flowing in the street. How do we get a 14-year-old boy to know that I am not the legitimate target of his fury? The boot is on both of our necks. Let's talk about getting it off. My blood will not wash out your horror. That's what I'm interested in getting across to adolescent black boys. There are little black children having babies. But this is not an immaculate conception. So we got little black boys who are making babies too. We have little black children making little black children. I want to deal with that so our kids will not have to repeat that waste of themselves. Did you, like, gosh, you know, like, if you want, just turn off the podcast, just turn it off, because it's like, you know, it's so stupid. Like, just, like, the way how I'm looking at it is, there are some black people who are out there reading this, you know, reading this essay and saying, oh man, she's so smart. Oh man, she's right. You know, power difference between us. We don't even acknowledge them. Yeah, we don't acknowledge them because they don't exist. You just made them exist, and now you're putting this whole black women as victim. And that's the mentality you got to realize that these black feminists come at black people with. That, oh man, black women are just victims. You know, and these quote unquote white supremacist people, you know, they're doing the same thing with black men, and you'll see that later with James Baldwin, where he's like, oh no, black men are such victims, and it's like, shut up. You're so weird. You're so wrong. You know, 14-year-old boy doesn't know the legitimate target of his fury. What? Black woman's blood flowing in the streets. Where? You know, I mean, maybe she's just doing hyperbole. Maybe she's being dramatic. I don't know. But like, it's over. It's overboard. You know? The 14-year-old boy just like targeting black women, or a 49-year-old, 49-year-old black women, it's not really a thing. I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, there's no violence in, you know, black communities, sure, but it's just not this, you know? It's really not this, you know? And talking about adolescent black boys, you know, somebody else would say the criminalization of black boys. I don't really care to say it. But, you know, the whole notion of black girls are having babies. Like, hello, black girls and black boys, if they're having babies, it's most likely consensual, you know, for the most part. And I'm not saying that there's nothing else going on in our communities, because there is. But, you know, by and large, you know, these black girls are, you know, like you can't plate them as victims. And the thing is that, like, what is this whole, you know, they're being wasted for having kids? Like, where does that nonsense, like, why would you even say that? It's too much. But again, there are black women, black men too sometimes, right, who are reading this crap and saying, yo, these people are geniuses, or man, they really understand us, they really get us, and all of it's ridiculous. But again, I keep telling you, you gotta prepare. You gotta look, get the Pro-Black Compendium in black people's hands, and get Zuberi and Maroons of Maa in black people's hands, because you have to have some sort of clarity. Because what you have to see is that white people are offering you an ideology. You know, they offer you two ideologies of victimhood, racial victimhood. You know, white supremacy ideology, and the ideology of black feminism. So the ideology of white supremacy, or the ideology of counter-white supremacy, and the ideology of black feminism, right? And both of them are victim ideologies, right? And the thing is that you want to get something like Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa to grasp an ideology that of assertion, of nationhood, of nationalism. Like, you want to get some nationalists in your library, okay? And you want to get some nationalists in the library of other black people. And that's why I'm trying to tell you, Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa is the book that if you figure, hey, look, this person's not going to read the Pro-Black Compendium, right? It's too big. It's too much, right? Get them a copy of Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa, okay? Just, I know a lot of you are looking at it like, yo, I don't want to spend that much on a book. Do it. Okay, just do it. You know, I'm looking at my bookshelf. I have a lot of books. I have more, but at this point, I have more books that I haven't read than that I did read. You know, because, you know, one, I wanted to support, you know, black bookstores, but another is that you gotta have these books in your collection. But something like Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa, like, you get that and you could read it to people. You could have people recite it. You could do all that, but it delivers that consciousness that will take them away from this, because this right here that the white people are churning out, right, for at least 20 years, right, or actually 40 years, because, you know, feminism is old as the mother, right, but they're churning this out for at least 40 years, right. You gotta do something about that, and I'm giving you an easy way. I'm giving you an easy way. You know, and the reason why I'm saying Zuberi is because, like, real talk, it's one of the most nationalistic books out there. Because I particularly wrote it to be that. But let's go back to James Baldwin. I hear you, but let me backtrack for better or worse. You know, for whatever reason, and whether it's wrong or right, for generations, men have come into this world either instinctively knowing or believing or being taught that since they were men, they in one way or another had to be responsible for the women and children, which means the universe. Now again, this is the homosexualized black man who sleeps with white men talking about we as black men should be responsible for women and children, who mean the universe. And meanwhile, again, if women and children were the universe, why is this dude in a homosexualized relationship with a white man? So, you know, Audre Lorde says, and James Baldwin says, I don't think there's any way around that. And Audre Lorde wants to fight, of course, so she says, any way around that now? And James Baldwin says, I don't think there's any way around that fact. And Audre Lorde goes, well, if we can put people on the moon and we can blow this whole planet up, if we can consider digging 18 inches of radioactive dirt off of the Bikini Atolls and somehow finding something to do with it, if we can do that, we as black cultural workers can somehow begin to turn that stuff around, because there's nobody anymore buying cave politics. Kill the mammoth or else the species is extinct. We have moved beyond that. Those little scrubby ass kids in the 6th grade, I want those black kids to know that brute force is not a legitimate way of dealing across sex difference. I want to set up some different paradigms. Now, if you pay attention, Audre Lorde's not paying attention to James Baldwin, right? Like, he's just that feminine. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's just that feminine where it's like, you know, you might have said something, but I don't even care. I'm just gonna say it. But then here's another thing too. You hear how much animosity she's holding toward little black boys. You know? Like, those little scrubby ass kids in the 6th grade, like, what? And like, what do you like, what? Like just this weird animosity that, you know, I didn't pick up the first time, but now that I'm reading it again, it's like, a freaking psychopath. You know? But James Baldwin goes back and he's like, yeah, there's a real difference between the way a man looks at the world, right? And he's barely even a man. You know what I'm saying? Barely even a man, but he is technically a man, right? So he's like, there's a real difference between the way a man looks at the world. And Audre Lorde, you know, ever ignoring him, she's like, yes, yes. And James Baldwin continues, and the way a woman looks at the world, a woman does not know much more than a man. And Audre Lorde, of course, defensive, you know, obviously, she would say, and why? For the same reason black people know what white people are thinking, because we have to do it for our survival, you know? James Baldwin says, all right. And then Audre Lorde says, we're finished being bridges. Don't you see? It's not black women who are shedding black men's blood on the streets yet. Now, I usually want to read through the whole thing before I pause, but I want to read that one again. It's not black women who are shedding black men's blood on the street yet. I mean, come on, guys. It's a threat, right? But let's continue, right? We're not cleaving your heads open with axes. Like what? Okay. We're not shooting you down. We're saying, listen, what's going on between us is related to what's going on between us and other people. But we have to solve our own shit at the same time as we're protecting our black asses. Because if we don't, we are wasting energy that we need for joint survival, right? So, again, she just openly threatens. She's calling for black men to take out the axes. I mean, she's calling for black women to basically kill black men, right? Or she's saying, hey, well, let's get to killing black men, and of course James Baldwin, like, and this is what I'm saying. James Baldwin, probably the worst example of a man, you know, either for this conversation or in general, right? But let's just say for this conversation, right? And he says, I'm not even disagreeing, but if you put the argument in that way, you see, a man has a certain story to tell too, just because he is a man. But let's go back. Why would you not disagree with somebody openly saying that black women are not shedding black men's bloods on the street yet, and we're not cleaving your head open with axes, we're not shooting you down, right? What? You know, like if I go to somebody and I say, hey, look, I'm not punching you in the face right now, right? Clearly you get an image of what I'm thinking about that person. Freaking psychopaths, man. But again, this is the intellectual for the black feminist movement, you know. And of course, James Baldwin's an intellectual for the white supremacy movement. You know, next to, you know, Nelly Fuller Jr., you know, who's just a freaking like tool or whatever, right? But let's continue. So she says, yes, and it's vital that I be alive and able to listen to it. So she's just obsessed with this whole death question, right? So James Baldwin continues. He says, James Baldwin goes on. He says, yes, because we are the only hope we have. A family quarrel is one thing. A public quarrel is another. And you and I, you know, in the kitchen with the kids, with each other, or in bed, we have a lot to deal with each other. But we've got to know what we're dealing with. And there's no way around it. There's no way around it. I'm a man. I'm not a woman, right? Keep telling yourself that, James Baldwin, okay? But what in the world? You heard this, right? You know, in the kitchen with the kids, with each other, or in bed. Dude, you're not in the kitchen with a woman, or with the kids with a woman, or with each other, like with women, or in bed with women. You know? You're not, but you're perpetrating the fraud. Because again, you know, this guy, James Baldwin, what I know of him is that, you know, people would say stuff like, you know, oh man, you know, these homosexuals, they didn't do nothing, or whatever. And then other people would say, what about James Baldwin? Or what about, you know, that other guy, Baynard or whatever, right? And of course, both of them are traitors, right? But the reality is that, you know, that whole, you know, what about these people? This is the foolishness. Like they're posing as frauds, but it's the, you know, for lack of a better term, the Trojan horse. Okay? And you fall for it. You fall for it. But here you have it. These people are just like lying. You're not gonna be, first off, you're not gonna be in the bed with this lesbian or this lesbianized, this homosexualized woman. You know, because you're a homosexualized man. But let's go on. So Audre Lorde says, that's right. So James Baldwin says, no one will turn me into a woman, right? Meanwhile, this white boy did, but let's move on, right? No one will turn me into a woman. You're a woman and you're not a man. No one will turn you into a man. And we are indispensable for each other, and the children depend on us both. Again, what children? You know, you chose a lifestyle that is non-reproductive. You get what I'm saying? So stop talking about children. Like that's like basic. But we're going to move on, right? So Audre Lorde says, it's vital for me to be able to listen to you, to hear what it is that defines you, and for you to listen to me, to hear what it is that defines me. Because so long as we are operating in that old pattern, it doesn't serve anybody, and it certainly hasn't served us. Now again, just notice that Audre Lorde is not listening to this dude, but she's insisting that he listen to her. You know, and of course, this is like the pattern of the black feminist movement. You know, they're not going to listen to you, but they'll insist that you listen to them. Yeah, I paused for dramatic effect. All right, moving on. James Baldwin says, I know that. What I really think is that neither of us has anything to prove, at least not in the same way. If we weren't in the North American wilderness, and the inevitable dissension between brother and sister, between man and woman, let's face it, all those relations which are rooted in love also are involved in this quarrel. Because our real responsibility is to endlessly redefine each other. I cannot live without you, and you cannot live without me, and the children can't live without us. Again, just it's like, I don't want to say it again, but just look how it's just, ugh. You understand? Why would you say I can't live without you when he's not involved with a black person, and he's not involved with a woman. He's chosen to live without black people and women. But meanwhile, he's here talking about, I can't live without you, you can't live without me. And again, she chose to live with white woman. And the children can't live without us. What are you saying? What are you saying? It's the thing is that a lot of people today are just hypocrites. And part of the reason why they're hypocrites is because people like these people are like, hey, I'm going to talk one way and walk another. I'm going to say I want to go south. I'm going to say I'm going south and go north. You understand? South to Africa, north to Europe. South talkers, north walkers. Maybe you can hashtag that one. Hashtag South talkers, north walkers. Or maybe suggest a better hashtag than that. But that's it. You know, that's it. And by the way, when I say hashtag something, you know, consider whether or not you're like, if you're on Twitter, if you're on social media, and you should follow me again at Onitaset. But if you're on Twitter or whatever, try to at least for a little moment have your account public when you do something to hashtag, you know, get people's attention. Because in order for people to see it, you know, your account has to be public. You get what I'm saying? But moving on. Audre Lorde says, but we have to. Sorry. Let's go back. He says redefine ourselves, right? Let me see where he says that. Yeah, our real responsibility is to endlessly redefine each other, right? Notice how that's not a program. That's not a program. It's nothing. No one else is doing that. No one else in power is doing that. White distractions are doing that, but nobody else in power is doing that. The quote-unquote capitalist bourgeoisie or wealthy or upper class, whatever you want to call them, the elites of white people, whatever you want to call them, right? They're not redefining themselves. They're exercising power. They're exercising programs. They're not redefining themselves. Moving on, right? Audre Lorde says, but we have to define ourselves for each other. We have to redefine ourselves for each other, because no matter what the underpinnings of the distortion are, the fact remains that we have absorbed it. We have all absorbed the sickness and ideas in the same way we absorbed racism. It's vital that we deal constantly with racism and with white racism among black people, that we recognize this as a legitimate area of inquiry. We must also examine the ways that we have absorbed sexism and heterosexism. These are the norms in this dragon we have been born into, and we need to examine these distortions with the same kind of openness and dedication that we examine racism. Okay, again, not a program. Examining, redefining, and notice that this is the only time that Audre Lorde seems to have actually noticed what James Baldwin was saying, right? She was probably just twiddling her thumbs while this dude was talking, and then she heard redefine, and she was like, let me get in on that, right? But here she has it. This is like if you're paying attention, this is pretty much black feminism in a nutshell. It's really that ridiculous. And yet, it's just such a it's like, why are we looking at racism? Why don't we look at sexism and heterosexism? And it's, again, neither of those, sexism and heterosexism aren't real. You understand? Again, the only thing that you have to, and racism is not even, like you look at episode 6, like I said, you're going to see that racism is not real, not really a word either. But the whole idea is that you got to look at the cultural denial of African people. That's what's really the focus. The cultural denial. Okay? And you can incorporate, the reversal of that denial in a program. But the whole idea is that these people, what they're doing is they're saying, let's define each other, right? Based off of what? Based off of how our victimhood. Because again, remember that essay I read earlier, about the mythical norm. That was a victim essay, but that's it, So let's go to James Baldwin. So he says, you use the word racism, right? And Audre Lorde says the hatred of black or color, right? And what's interesting is that in her other essay, she kind of defines racism too. And matter of fact, let me just turn away and pull out that definition for you. So, because it's ridiculous, right? So racism, and it looks like she's quoting somebody. Racism is the belief in the inherent superiority of one race over all others, and thereby the right to dominance. Sexism, the belief in the inherent superiority of one sex over the other, and thereby the right to dominance. Ageism, heterosexism, elitism, classism, right? And I made a note on the bottom, and I said this is all Occidentalism. In Occidentalism, racism is tribalism and sexism is patriarchy. The other isms are also aspects of Occidentalism, as fundamentally dominance is a mainstay of Urugu. Again, this is all Occidentalism. Africans need not debate these. We need to return to originalism. So basically, these are all aspects of the European's way. European has hierarchies, right? This is me talking now. I'm not reading this thing anymore. But Europeans have hierarchies, okay? They always are. They're hierarchical people, right? We should not be, or Eurasians in general, hierarchical people. We should not be debating the nuances of their hierarchies, because they're supposed to be hierarchical because that's who they are. It's like, why do male lions, why do female lions hunt? And meanwhile female hyenas, why are there certain behaviors amongst, animals, if you will? It's because that's their nature. That's their way. White people, their way is to make hierarchies. You know, that's their way. You know, this whole, oh, well, let's talk about sexism and heterosexism amongst African people is to be stupid, because it's not our way. You know, it's our denial of our way. It's a denial of our way, and what we need to do is we need to get back to our way. And we need a program to get back to our way, as opposed to just defining ourselves around white people, which was the whole basis of her mythical normative. But again, you know, but just a short, you know, she says right now, she shortens it, she says, racism, the hatred of black or color. So James Baldwin says, but beneath the word racism sleeps the word safety. Why is it important to be white or black? Right? Stupid ass question. And then she decides to up the stupidity by saying, why is it important to be a man rather than a woman? But again, this is the classic tactic. You know, let's not talk about race, let's talk about sex. You get what I'm saying? Let's talk about black male over black woman. You know? And it's not even, it's just so stupid. You know, it's just so stupid, because like who runs the prisons? Who runs the police force? Who runs the schools? Who runs, you know, it's not this black man that you're vilifying. Anyway, James Baldwin says, in both cases, it is assumed that it is safer to be white than to be black, and it's assumed that it's safer to be man than to be woman. These are both masculine assumptions, but those are the assumptions that we're trying to overcome or to confront. And I'm just gonna jump forward, okay? So Audre Lorde says, to confront, the vulnerability that lies behind those masculine assumptions is different from me and you, and you must begin to look at that. James Baldwin says, yes. Audre Lorde says, and the fury that is engendered in the denial of that vulnerability, we have to break through it, because there are children growing up believe that it is legitimate to shed female blood, right? I have to break through it because those boys really think that the sign of their masculinity is impregnating a sixth grader. I have to break through it because of that little sixth grade girl who believes that the only thing in life she has is what lies between her legs, right? Now, again, you know, like, and you see, I start messing up because I'm just like, what the, you know, what did I get myself into, you know? But yeah, she's going back to those sixth grade boys. I don't know what's her obsession with sixth grade boys, right? But you know, again, the relationship between the sixth grader and the other sixth grader is consensual, I would imagine, right? I mean, usually, you know, typically, right? I'm not saying that it's always consensual, and in those cases where it's not consensual, you know, that's a real problem, obviously. But this whole, we're shedding female blood by having sex, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is wrong with you, woman? And notice this is like a real subconscious hatred of boys and subconscious hatred of men, you know, hatred of penetration, hatred of black, like, penises. You understand what I'm saying? Like she's something wrong. Like she sees something wrong with, you know, kids being born, you know, or kids being impregnated or whatever, or even like male-female relationships. You just pick up on that, you know, and it's like, what's wrong with you, Audre Lorde? You know, like, what's wrong with you? But again, this is like when someone else reads this, they're like some fool or somebody with a poor ideology is going to read this, or even be indoctrinated with a poor ideology, okay, and then read this and say, yeah, you know, wow, she's so right, man. These black men, these little black boys are being violent against black girls by having consensual relationships with them. Like, what? Anyway, so James Baldwin says, yeah, but we're not talking now about men and women. We're talking about a particular society. We're talking about a particular time and place. You were talking about the shedding of black blood in the streets, but I don't understand, right? And let's go like that. You shouldn't understand. James Baldwin, you should not understand because it's ridiculous, right? But let's go back. Audre Lorde says, okay, the cops are killing the men and the men are killing the women. I'm talking about rape. I'm talking about murder. Right? Wow. You know what I'm saying? Like, wow. And this is something you got to notice. You know, the cops were killing the men back then. This is 1984, right? Of course, it was before that too. You know, you got pictures of Malcolm talking about, oh no, police brutality sucks. You know, and this is in the 60s. You know, so basically, black men are just being killed by overseers, right? And that's just and it hadn't stopped. You get what I'm saying? Because we haven't decided to stop it, I guess, right? But here you got men are killing the women, and I'm talking about rape and I'm talking about murder, and it's like, what is wrong with you? I mean, it's like these are issues that should be brought up, but you have too much of a victim mentality, and you have too much of a focus on things that are like, it's just not as prevalent as you make it out to be. You know, or it's not as prevalent, or it's not to the extent, or to the, it's not like what you're saying is like, it's more nuanced. It's much more nuanced. But James Baldwin, of course, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I do think you're barking up the wrong tree. I'm not trying to get the black man off the hook, or black women for that matter, but I am talking about the kingdom in which we live. So Audre Lorde says, yes, I absolutely agree. The kingdom in which these distortions occur has to be changed. And then so James Baldwin says, something happens to the man who beats up a lady. Something happens to the man who beats up his grandmother. Something happens to the junkie. I know that very well. I walk the streets of Harlem. I grew up there, right? Now it is not the black cat's fault who sees me and tries to mug me. I got to know that. It's his responsibility, but it's not his fault. That's a nuance. I got to know that it's not him who is my enemy, even when he beats up his grandmother. His grandmother has got to know. I'm trying to say, one's got to see what drove both of us into those streets. We be both from the same track. Do you see what I mean? I've come home myself, wanting to beat up anything in sight. But Audre, she goes, I'm here. And James Baldwin says, I agree with you. I see exactly what you mean, and it hurts me at least as much as it hurts you. But how to maneuver oneself past this point? How not to lose him or her who may be in what is in effect occupied territory? That is really what the black situation is in this country. For the ghetto, all that is lacking is barbed wire. And when you pen people up like animals, the intention is to debase them, and you have debased them. Right? So, yeah. And of course, Audre Lorde says, Jimmy, we don't have an argument. But yeah, you see the victim mentality. You see the whole, oh no, I'm so oppressed. We're so oppressed, and that's why we do ill to each other, right? But there's no program to stop it. It's just, hey, this white man got us in the projects, The white man got us in the project, and because we're in his project, we're going to do whatever and it's like, no, you're in the projects, get out. You know what I'm saying? Or you're in the projects, focus your energy against the people running the project. Or focus your energy on salvaging, the situation as best you can. Like, what is it that the black people are being deprived of? You're being deprived of an economic base, then find an economic solution. You get what I'm saying? Whatever you want to say. Like if I go to the hood, and I go into one of the fast food stores, right? It costs more than if I go into a white neighborhood, right? Why? Because there's something, like, notwithstanding the lack of, the quote unquote lack of money there, right? There's money there. Or notwithstanding the lack of resources, there's resources there. You know what I'm saying? And the big thing is that we have to address not so much the need for like we have to understand that we have a need for resources, but also a need for resourcefulness. And here he is. It's not his fault. It's not this guy's fault. Shut up. Just shut up. If he beats his grandmother, beat his ass. And tell him, hey, that's not the enemy. You understand? That's not your enemy. And get right. And if you want to throw your life away, then throw your life away in the struggle against these crackers. That's it. If you want to throw your life away in style. You know, doing something meaningful, not beating up old women. You know, what's wrong with you? And on that note, you know, you get them the Pro-Black Compendium, and we're going to go into a break, you know, that is going to be focused around the Pro-Black Compendium. Don't go anywhere, and don't skip it.
Greetings, everyone. This is Koku from the Bitter Medicine Podcast, inviting you to tune in to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
When will African people have basic rights? When will we be protected? When will our cost of living be eliminated? When will our cultures be preserved? We need a new leadership, one that has studied the problems and learned the solutions. The Pro-Black Compendium is the book to start off that leadership. Quotations, essays, poems, stories, codes of conduct, curricula, principles, relationship advice, marketing tips, group economics, games, book clubs, movie nights, chronologies, civilizations, wars, warriors, authors, songs, conflict resolution. The list goes on. There is no book more necessary for starting our people on the path to African redemption.
You are listening to the Pro-Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio.
All right, we're back. So, you know, James Baldwin says, I know we don't. You know, after Audre Lorde says we don't have an argument. So, Audre Lorde says, but what we have to do is what we do have is a real disagreement about your responsibility, not just to me, but to my son and to our boys. Your responsibility to him is to get across to him in a way that I never would be able to, because he did not come out of my body and has another relationship to me. Your relationship to him as his father is to tell him I'm not a fit target for his fury. You know? So James Baldwin would say what any reasonable person would say, which is okay, like shut the fuck up. Like what's up with you? What's your obsession with black boys targeting you for violence? You know, maybe I don't know. It's possible that maybe once upon a time something negative happened to her. That would make her whole insistence a lot more, you know, meaningful, or a lot like give some context to it. And maybe I don't know if that's the case, but like it's like stop it at this point, you know, because it seems like you have some sort of animus against these black boys. And I mean, I don't know if the context, like I don't know the context. You know, but even you listening could hear how her whole victim mentality got me thinking she was victimized. You know what I'm saying? Got me thinking she was victimized. And really, truthfully, I doubt that she was, but it seems like that might be the case. You know, and you could fill in the comments whether that was the case. But that's how bad it is. Like, she's just on this whole, you know, oh man, these black boys are targeting me, and it's like, what? You know, because my thing is that, like, I understand that there are black boys, you know, up to no good, and maybe perhaps, and obviously, you know, the whole gamut, the whole spectrum of our people, you know, can fall victim to them, you know, obviously. Or not victim, but could be their targets, if you will. But like her weird, you know, oh man, just get these black boys off of us, you know, and you know, it just fuels this sort of division, you know, just fuels this division, because and the thing is that the black boys are kind of the most harmless, you know, in the black community. You get what I'm saying? I mean, black children in general are just harmless, you know. And the whole, you know, like when you talk about power differences, like they don't really have power. I mean, except for if you look at it like, okay, well, organizing a gang, you know, by an adult, if you will, then they can exercise quote unquote power, but like not really, you know. But moving on, right? You know, like I said, James Baldwin says, okay. So she says, it's so entrenched in him that it's part of him as much as his blackness is, right? So she's saying violence against black women is entrenched in black boys as much as his blackness is. That's feminism. This is animosity. This is straight up, you know, caricaturing, you know, black men. And the thing is this, that if she was simply in a relationship with a black man and James Baldwin was simply in a relationship with a black woman, you know, this stupidity, this stupid animosity and animus, like, probably would never, you know, see the light of day. You know, white people want dysfunctional black people to make the main stage. You know, they want the R. Kelly to pee on a woman. They want the, you know, I don't know if Bill Cosby did this, but they want the serial rapist, you know, the serial rapist. They want, you know, Jay-Z shot his brother. You know, and I'm not saying that my brother has never done, you know, terrible things, you know, to me or whatever, or try to do terrible things to me, you know, like pull out a knife or maybe even stab me or whatever, right? I'm not saying that didn't happen, but like shot his brother, you get what I'm saying? That's the dysfunctional type of people that, you know, are raised to the forefront, and then, you know, we as you know, like generally speaking, we just look at them like, oh man, let's be critical of this dysfunctional person. But like part of the thing is the reason why they're even famous because they're dysfunctional. You know, James Baldwin and Audre Lorde are dysfunctional. You know, why are you talking about black people if you're sleeping white? It don't even make any sense. Just you know, but it's because the dysfunction. But you know, James Baldwin says, all right, and then, you know, Audre Lorde says, I can't do it, you have to, right? And so James Baldwin says, all right, I accept. The challenge is there in any case. It never occurred to me that it would be otherwise. That's absolutely true. I simply want to locate where the danger is. And then look at this. Audre Lorde would say, yes, yeah, we're at war. She's saying we're at war. You know, so she's saying like this is how white people get you. They give you something good and they juxtapose it to something bad. You know? It's like the Bible might say, hey, let's have peace or whatever. Then it's gonna say turn the other cheek. You know, like or their Bible, right? But that's the thing. It's like they give you something good and bad. So you have some woman who's saying we're at war, right? But she's sleeping with white folk. You know, she's hating on black men hard, hating on black boys hard. But she's talking about we're at war. Now, maybe I'm misreading this, and she's saying we're at war with each other. You know, which is even worse. You know, like black. She's saying black men and black women are at war. That's even worse. But I'm gonna give her the benefit of the doubt and say, you know, maybe she's saying we're at war with white people, right? Which is true. Okay. So James Baldwin says we are behind the gates of a kingdom which is determined to destroy us. You know, again, James Baldwin, just like her, you know, he's coming correct. He's like, yo, these white people are determined to destroy us. And so, you know, Audre Lorde agrees. She says, yes, exactly so. And I'm interested in seeing that we do not accept terms that will help us destroy each other. And I think one of the ways in which we destroy each other is by being programmed to knee-jerk on our differences. Knee-jerk on sex, knee-jerk on sexuality, right? Again, you know, she's like the impetus for male-female division, right? But here she is like, oh, let's not destroy each other. Like, and she was just earlier telling the dude, look, at least I'm not cutting your head off, you know? Yeah. Anyway, James Baldwin says, I don't quite know what to do about it, but I agree with you. And I understand exactly what you mean. You're quite right. Oh, wait, actually, let's go back. You notice how she says sexuality, too. Like, both of these people just slip in, sexuality, and they slip it in like they're not talking about themselves. But they slip in sexuality, and again, that's how they get you. They just slip in these words. Everything else, well, nothing really decent here. But if you're like, if you didn't read the Pro-Black Compendium yet, you probably think something here is decent, right? And because you think something here is decent, she's just gonna slip in these things, and then you're gonna think it's okay. Knee jerk on sexuality. What? What does that have to do with what does that have to do with the conversation? You get what I'm saying? It doesn't have anything to do with the conversation, but it's there so that the subtext is read. Because again, the subtext is that these are two homosexualized individuals who are constantly bringing in the question of sexuality in a conversation around race, so that you then put race and sexuality together, and you put down that you could be any sexuality and discuss race, and you could be interested in any kind of people and discuss race. But yeah, moving forward, right? James Baldwin says, I don't quite know what to do about it, but I agree with you, and I understand exactly what you mean. You're quite right. We get confused with genders, with what the Western notion of, all right, listen to this right here. What the Western notion of woman is, which is not necessarily what a woman is at all, it's certainly not the African notion of what a woman is, or even the European notion of what a woman is. And there's certainly not standard of masculinity in this country which anybody can respect. Part of the horror of being a Black American is being trapped into being an imitation of an imitation. So, of course, he tries to be deep at the end. But notice how he says the African notion of what a woman is. If you were not mistaken, now if you didn't know better, right? You would think this was some sort of pro-Black, pro-African dude. The African notion of what a woman is, that's a good ass question. And then he's like, the standard of masculinity. Meanwhile, again, listen to me, 20 years ago, he's waving a freaking handkerchief talking about, can you guys hear? Like Malcolm X just sees him for 1 freaking second and says, is this dude a faggot? For 1 second. And he's talking about the standard of masculinity. And the thing is that you don't have to behave feminine to be homosexualized. Okay, you don't have to do that. This dude is going out of his way to be as feminine as possible, waving a handkerchief. You understand? I don't even own a handkerchief. I don't even own a handkerchief. This dude is waving a handkerchief. All right, guys. So my battery's running low, so I'm gonna try to go a little quicker, okay? So Audre Lorde says, I can't tell you what I wished you would be doing. I can't redefine masculinity. I can't redefine Black masculinity, certainly. I am in the business of redefining Black womanness. You are in the business of redefining Black masculinity. And I'm saying, hey, please go on doing it, because I don't know how much longer I can hold this fort. And I really feel that Black women are holding it, and we're beginning to hold it in ways that are making this dialogue less possible. Okay, so first off, I'm going to skip ahead and see how much more I got. Not too much, but yeah. Did you understand? These people, neither of them in straight Black relationships, neither of them are talking about redefining Black masculinity and Black femininity. And then you hear what she's saying. Black women can't hold a fort any longer, right? That's what the Black feminists are saying today. It's just so stupid, because it's like, what fort are you holding? Like what did you? And then even if you were holding a fort, you're not holding the fort if you're turning against it. Just, oh my gosh, man! I tell you, man. Look, this is why I wasn't born. And actually, I shouldn't age myself, but like pretty much, let's say that you know, let's not even talk about that. But my whole thing is this: James Baldwin is lucky. You know, he wasn't saying this stuff in front of me. You know what I'm saying? Just lucky. And I know you might say, well, didn't Audre Lorde say that? No, who cares? James Baldwin is lucky. You know what I'm saying? All right, so James Baldwin would say, really? Why do you say that? I don't feel that at all. Again, he doesn't feel that at all because it's not real, but let's go on. He says, it seems to me you're blaming the black man for the trap he's in, right? Again, trap he's in, victimhood. You get what I'm saying? It's the white supremacy novel, you know, nonsense. So instead of saying, hey, well, yeah, it's just like, you know, it just turns against, you know, it's just so stupid. But anyway, Audre Lorde says, I'm not blaming the black man. I'm saying don't shed my blood. I'm not blaming the black man. I'm saying if my blood is being shed, at some point, I'm going to have a legitimate reason to take up a knife and cut your damn head off. And I'm not trying to do it. How many times? You understand? This is an intellectual. How many times is she going to threaten this dude? All right. Anyway, James Baldwin says, if you drive a man mad, you'll turn him into a beast. It has nothing to do with his color. And then, you know, Audre Lorde just, you know, she just, you know, goes for it. If you drive a woman insane, she will react like a beast too. There is a larger structure, a society with which we are in total and absolute war. So yeah, she's talking about war with white people. Okay, but let's go on. We live in the mouth of a dragon, and we must be able to use each other's forces to fight it together because we need each other. I am saying that in our joint battle, we have also developed some very real weapons, and when we turn them against each other, they are even more bloody because we know each other in a particular way. When we turn those weapons against each other, the bloodshed is terrible. Even worse, we are doing this in a structure where we are already embattled. I am not denying that. It is a family discussion I'm having now. I'm not blame. I do not blame black men for what they are. I'm asking them to move beyond. I do not blame black men. What I'm saying is we have to take a new look at the ways in which we fight our joint oppression, because if we don't, we're going to be blowing each other up. We have to begin redefining the terms of what woman is, what man is, how we relate to each other. And again, you know, Africa has definitions of manhood and womanhood. All right? And they're not against each other, obviously. She wants us to be against each other. And she's saying, oh no, we don't. She doesn't. But she you know, it's clear that she's like, yo, let's, you know, James Baldwin is saying, oh no, black man's a victim. And Audre Lorde is saying, oh, black men are killing black men are the worst people, you know, to black women. And this is the stupid debate that is going on with black people today, because these black people are going to colleges where they're exposed to James Baldwin and Audre Lorde, and we, the black nationalists, don't have universities or colleges or whatever where we can prepare people otherwise. And by the way, listen to me right now. I'm for my next book, first I'm going to read a few books, but then I want to start a lecture, right? And I'm going to charge you. Okay, I'm going to charge you to listen to. I'm going to do 7 or 8 lectures. One of them is going to be free. Okay, but I'm going to have to I'm going to charge you for these lectures. Okay, and I'm going to write a book on these lectures. But the whole thing is that these lectures, you need to incorporate them in your education. That means that I'm thinking right now that you're supposed to write them out by hand, the lecture. Okay, and you see how long this thing is. I don't know if this lecture is going to be longer than this or not, but I want you to write it out by hand. I want you to type it out, and I want you to repeat the thesis or the theme of it. You know, but the whole thing is that you got to start doing, like, you got to go through your own education. Okay, you got to start going through your own education. And if I were you, I would say, hey, look, Oni, I'm gonna send you some cash. I got some cash. I'm not spending. I'm gonna send it to you. Or I'm just gonna get another copy of Zuberi, or I'm gonna get another copy of the Pro-Black Compendium, or I'm gonna get a copy of the Carlos A. Cook's Reader. Whatever it is, I gotta pay the professor. But we're going to have to start, because you see that these people are repeating a stupid debate that black men and black women are engaged in today, because black people are going to these freaking educational institutions because white people pay their professors and we don't. Anyway, let's hurry up. Our battery's low. So James Baldwin says, but that demands redefining the terms of the Western world. Audre Lorde says, and both of us have to do it. Both of us have to do it. James Baldwin says, but you don't realize that in this republic, the only real crime is to be a black man. Right? Shut the fuck up, stupid fucking idiot. Shut up. White supremacy. You know what I'm saying? That's all he's doing. White supremacy. You know, oh man, the black man's such a victim. Shut the fuck up. Black man, get off of your freaking knees and stand up. Understand, James Baldwin bent over for a white boy voluntarily. Or went on his knees for a white boy voluntarily. A white boy. You know, and look, real talk, if you're gonna do that homosexual stuff, do it with white people. Okay? Do it with white people. Sure. Because I knew a woman who had a disease, right? Like one of those, you know, STIs or whatever. And she, you know, next time I saw her, she was with a white man. And I was like, you know, you're a round of applause. You know what I'm saying? That's what you're supposed to be doing. If you got some sort of degeneracy, some sort of sickness, some sort of dysfunction, go to white people with that. Show enough. But on the other hand, don't be talking pro-black to us. Unless of course it's a ploy just to get with white people, sure. But otherwise, you know, don't be doing that, because you're gonna confuse people. You understand? A lot of black people are confused by you. But go on, yeah. The only real kind to be a black man. You know, shut the fuck up, man. Black men are supposed to stand up. Supposed to stand up, not complain about anything. But go on. Like I'm not complaining. I'm telling you, build a freaking school. I'm not complaining like, oh man, you know, we don't got no schools, or oh man, the white people are harassing us in schools. No, I'm telling you, build a school. The money you spent, the money you gave to Umar didn't turn out. Give it to somebody else, or build it yourself. You know, or say, oh, hey, Oni, read a little faster. You know, here's some money. Read a little faster. We need your lecture now, because I'm about to record this lecture for my son. You understand? He gonna be looking at the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s or whatever. Then he gonna hear me talking about, you know, well, I don't want to give out the subject, but you understand. Well, you know, this is real talk, real education. But moving on, and so, you know, obviously Audre Lorde is gonna say no. She's gonna say, I know, I don't realize that. I realize that the only crime is to be black. I realize the only crime is to be black, and that includes me too. And then, you know, James Baldwin decided to be a fucking loser. Tool's gonna say, a black man has a prick, and they hack it off. A black man is a blank, I don't know what it is, when he tries to be a model for his children and he tries to protect his women. That is a principal crime in this republic, and every black man knows it, and every black woman pays for it, and every black child. How can you be so sentimental as to blame the black man for a situation which has nothing to do with him? Audre Lorde says, you still haven't come past blame. I'm not interested in blame. I'm interested in changing. And really, like she's not really interested in changing. She's really interested in killing. And you know, you got to look at the subtext, right? But James Baldwin says, may I tell you something? May I tell you something? I might be wrong or right. And then, you know, Audre Lorde says, I don't know. Tell me, right? Because he's so feminine. Like, what do you mean, may I tell you something? Just tell her. You know, dudes, look, anybody who's listening to this, because, I mean, real talk, I probably would have turned it off myself. As interesting as, you know, I'm thinking it is, you know, I probably would have turned this off myself, because, like, these guys are freaking idiots, right? But if anybody's listening to this, yeah, you know, don't be, like, if you're a dude, don't be this feminine. Okay? Not with this whole, may I tell you something? Just say what you gotta say. That's hard. Get some social skills. Again, look at page 199 of the Pro-Black Compendium. You know, get some social skills. You know? And actually, I just reminded, yeah, get some social skills, right? But yeah, man, I tell you something. Shut the fuck up, right? So anyway, so Audre Lorde says, I don't know, tell me, right? And he says, and James Baldwin says, do you know what happens to a man? And of course, you know, Audre Lorde, you know, because it's so stupid, it's so roundabout, it's so indirect. Like, shut up, dude. You know, and I don't mean to be rude when I say feminine, because I'm hoping there's not women out there, like it's not regular for women to be this horrible. By feminine, I just mean, like he was feminized in the sense of, in sense of the white dichotomy. How white people portray womanhood. Like women are supposed to be passive and weak and asking permission and all that stuff. He's doing that. So it's not black feminine. It's not black femininity. It's white femininity. He's behaving like a white woman, right? So anyway, he says, do you know what happens to a man? And she says, how can I know what happens to a man? Because it's such a stupid freaking question. It doesn't make any sense. I wouldn't be able to answer it, and I'm a dude, right? So he says, so James Baldwin goes, do you know what happens to a man when he's ashamed of himself, when he can't find a job, when his socks stink, when he can't protect anybody, when he can't do anything? Do you know what happens to a man when he can't face his children because he's ashamed of himself? It's not like being a woman, right? And Audre Lorde says, no, that's right. Do you know what happens to a woman who gives birth, who puts that child out there and has to go out and hook to feed it? Do you know what happens to a woman who goes crazy and beats her kid across the room because she's so full of frustration and anger? Do you know what that is? Do you know what happens to a lesbian who sees her woman and her child beaten on the streets while 6 other guys are holding her? Do you know what that feels like? Right? And I don't know, maybe, and look, again, it sounds like she was a victim of something, right? Anyway, but James Baldwin says, and Audre Lorde says, well then, in the same way you know how a woman feels, I know how a man feels, because it comes down to human beings being frustrated and distorted because we can't protect the people we love. So now let's start. And James Baldwin says, all right, okay. And then Audre Lorde says, let's start with that and deal. So, yeah, right? Notice again, it's not a program. It's just a bunch of, oh man, I'm the bigger victim. Baldwin is trying to say, oh, I'm such a big victim. Black men are such big victims because we, yada yada. And of course, again, he's living with a white man, right? And then, Audre Lorde's like, oh no, I'm a bigger victim. I mean, even in her last thing where she's like, her child was beaten while guys held her back. Like it sounds like the child was the victim. I mean, not to laugh at no victimized child or whatever, but it just sounds like the child was the victim and you were just held back. But I mean, unless your whole victimhood is your inability to protect somebody, which is again we are like denied our culture, which is really something important to understand and recognize. But outside of that, this is just a ridiculous two people, two fools debating over nothing, no program whatsoever. But these are the people that are put into the public fool system and the educational, what's considered higher education, and for that, we as African people, we're not doing ourselves a favor. We're not doing ourselves any good. We need a higher education of our own. Okay? We need a higher education system of our own. I'm going to start off with these lecture series, but I already started you off with this Pro-Black Compendium. All right? So follow me on social media at Onitaset. Follow this channel. Leave a comment. I'm loving all the comments I got last week. Loving them, really. Definitely engage me more on social media. I'm next week I'm gonna well, it depends on if like when the brother finishes the Pro-Black Compendium. But at Raheem Gabon, he says he's gonna be he says he's a lot of questions that he wants to ask, and so that's probably going to be the next podcast or next week. And actually the week following, potentially we're going to have B. Dot the God, who is battle rapper. You get what I'm saying? So if you guys want to, anybody who's interested in coming on the conversation with me, let me know, and we could have it happen. I could do it for the whole month, because that would even be, that would even make this easier, So definitely reach out. But otherwise, like I said, there's a book club on the bittermedicineblogs.com, and it's King Leopold's Ghost. And of course, I feel uncomfortable saying the word king, but King Leopold at least, right? But yeah, definitely read the book, participate in the book club, and follow me on social media, engage me, and promote the Pro-Black Compendium, promote the book, promote Black higher education, because these two fools that I just read for you are what's considered Black higher education. So do us a favor and get Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa, get the Pro-Black Compendium, get Onitaset Kumat as the freaking professor for the higher education of Black people, today. You know what I'm saying? Like get me in the universities, or if not in the universities, get me in the bookshelf at home. That's where I need to be. All right, next to Chancellor Williams, But thanks so much for listening. If you turn this off, I'm not mad at you. If you listen through, I'm happy for you. I appreciate you. Let me know if you listen through. But yeah, thanks so much for tuning in to this week. And next week, like I said, it's gonna be at Rahim Gabon. You can follow him. I don't know how to pronounce this, Rahim or Rahim, because I know somebody named Rahim, and they got two E's, and But yes, at RAHIMGABON, and that's a cool brother. So definitely tune in next week, and then we're gonna do B. Dot the God after that, and he's a battle rapper, so that's gonna be cool too. But yeah, thanks. Peace and love. Shemi Emotep, Angu Jas, and Neb. Amen. Ma'at Dua Necha. Thank you for listening. I invite you to join hands with your brothers and sisters as we recite the African affirmation together. It's a call and response, so follow my lead. We are an African people, robbed from our homeland, robbed of our names, our languages, our cultures, our religions, our womanhood, our manhood, our sisterhood, our brotherhood, our motherhood, our fatherhood, our selfhood, our nationhood, and our self-respect. But we shall rise, never to fall again. Up, you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.